We are rolling.
Good morning. Welcome back to the conversation. This is Pointing Out the Obvious. This is our news and politics webcast. I'm your host, Patrick Russell, and over there is my very opinionated producer, Veronica. Together, we're here to lend our voices to the noise from a multi-generational perspective to help explain everything that's right and wrong in this world. Veronica, what would you say if I told you that the most stressful job in America right now is a U.S. park ranger?
What is it they do? Chase Bambi?
Now, that used to be the reputation that the park rangers would have, right? They typically don't like people. This is why they want to commune with nature as their job. And they generally are dealing with hikers, tourists, vacationers, and then, like you say, the wildlife, right? Bambi and things like that. Well, that's not the job description anymore.
Not anymore.
And that is what I'm believing is a red flag sound alert that we should all be taking notice of. There's been a beautiful article written in the Esquire magazine that caught my attention, but then looking out backwards for other magazines, there's been several articles that have been pointing to a very terrible trend. There's been a lot of suicides at national parks. I mean, it's jumped up. Last year was one in one article in Colorado in the national park. It was one. This year, 16.
Wow.
As far as armed engagements where there was a gun involved, that's quadrupled compared to the incidents that they've had in the years past. Not necessarily violent per se, but just coming across people with their guns on the trails and maybe potentially even in bad moods. So you did have to really consider them as a danger, even though you were able to really talk the situation and diffuse the situation, which is thankfully how most of these engagements go down. But now, mind you, if you had to fish a body of a hiker or even a suicider out of a gully and you had to do it once every month, would that start affecting your love for that job?
Definitely. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and probably, at some point you mentioned that, you're going to mention that they have to, go to therapy and then all these things to make sure that they understand what the hell is happening.
Absolutely. So what she's talking about is these park rangers are really being affected emotionally. This isn't just them spinning tales of what's going to happen. It's what's been happening, and a lot of that has to do with the overpopulation that's spilling over to homelessness, that's then spilling now, and this is where the red alert is happening. It's now moving from just the crevices of the big city, and now we're seeing the blight of homelessness in our one last refuge we have in America, the national parks. The ability to get away from it all and commune with nature and not really establish your relationship with nature as it really is establish a relationship with yourself. And now there's nowhere to escape for that, because even in these national parks, New Mexico, California, Colorado, most of these park rangers are reporting consistent incidences of homeless tent parks opening up. And the park rangers being on many levels, legally, physically, resourcefully, and then common sense wise, where are you going to send them to? You're out in the middle of nowhere, so how are you going to tell somebody to pick up their tent and move where? Understanding that the problem is bigger than themselves, and that's the bigger issue here, is that park rangers are becoming so overwhelmed. We need to take notice, because if we don't do anything, what they're experiencing is what we're all going to be experiencing in one way or the other. And from a younger generation's perspective, Veronica, what is your thoughts on the idea that now nowhere can you go where the sight and the presence of homelessness you can never escape it? What are your thoughts on our moving forward as a world where that could very well be the case?
I think it is the case now. We just don't see it as as often. So one quick story. I went to California a couple weeks ago. We went to Santa Monica. If you guys are familiar with that area, it's a really nice area. A lot
by
of
the
restaurants
beach.
By the beach. You see at least 5 homeless on the street, on only one street, and
average,
and that makes you feel at some point kind of like they're I mean, they have to be there in a way, because if you don't see them, it's like, oh, there's no homelessness. So, I mean,
It's become part of the landscape
Yes.
in all big cities
Yes.
now. That's how you feel it.
Yeah.
Because you've never really even experienced a chance, even from Mexico, I would assume, big city, big problems, homelessness, and seeing the homeless on the streets, under the bridges, overpasses. It's just what you feel is now part of the landscape.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like that in every city, every state, in the not so rich areas. You're gonna see homeless people. That's just a reality, per se. So, I mean, it is, and not only seeing them, but knowing that they can potentially do something to you. And it had happened before. I mean, there's videos that you see a homeless and you just walking the other side and they just attack you out of nowhere because obviously they're mentally ill. They're in drugs. So I mean, we are facing that, and I don't think we are doing enough to make sure that doesn't happen, and our kids, our grandkids, they don't experience living with homeless people. Yeah.
I want to continue this on the next webcast because I have an even bigger issue to even discuss that I think is more interesting, is that how do we look at the homeless person in general? Has that now changed? And I think by some of the things you just mentioned, there has drastically been a change in how we feel about the homeless person and whether or not we feel empathy for them, or do we want to start now strapping a little good old common sense to the situation and start having people earn their civil liberties? We're going to be talking about that definitely tomorrow. Guys, please, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but there is your opinion. Please be part of the show. Use the comment box below. Don't just subscribe to the show, even though we will be doing this on a daily basis, but be part of the show. It'll make the show a whole lot more fun. Thank you. Great job, guys. Remember, no matter what comes your way today, no matter what obstacles or challenges you might face, you just need to remember one thing. Give them hell. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.